On the 23rd day of February. We're delighted you are here, importantly, to listen to our candidates who are running for trustee of public funds, select board, and the school board. Not only do we have a good crowd here in the room, but we also have on Zoom people who are in attendance. As those of you who are on Zoom, if you have a question, would you please raise your hand and do not use the chat function. You will be identified by our Zoom hand-raising identifying person. So thank you all. If you are...
Add that to my resume.
So as we like to start all of our public meetings, I'd ask you to stand and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'm Bill Dakin, I'm the town moderator, and I'm delighted, as I said, to welcome you here as we are going to have the candidates for our town offices respond to questions. We have three groups. We have the trustee of public funds candidate. Shirley Barrett's not able to make it tonight, but we do have Jareen Slavinsky, and we also have candidates for the school board as well as for the board of select people. We'll start off. I'm going to ask the candidates some questions that we've prepared. And each candidate, or Jareen, starting out, can take a couple minutes to answer the questions. I'm not going to be the only one asking questions, but after I finish asking a couple questions, and we'll turn it over to the body to ask questions. If you do have a question, please raise your hand, be identified, and then come to the microphone. It's really important that we use the microphone. Otherwise, as we're taping this, it goes on SAPA TV, and for those who are on Zoom, people cannot hear if you're just talking from the floor, unless you are directly in front of the microphone. So, the trustees of public funds, welcome, Jareen Slavinsky. Could you please tell us a bit about why you want to serve the trustee of public funds, and more importantly, what does a trustee of public funds do?
So the reason I want to serve is I want the opportunity to serve the Chester community in a financial capacity. I'm a numbers person. I love numbers. Worked in accounting, regional accountant for Salvation Army for many, many years, and then I was United Healthcare's financial underwriter for many years. And I don't like to tell my age, so that's why I'm just saying many years. I am retired, and now is the first opportunity for me to be able to serve. I worked many, many hours. What does a trustee of public funds do? I believe that they should be making sure that all the funds given to them that is donated to the town of Chester are used appropriately. So that's the first thing I think, is that they have to make sure that whatever funds are given to them, that they disperse it according to the will of the donor. When they do that, and so they have to keep track, that they keep track of the funds they get, the purpose of those funds, and then to disperse them in a correct manner. I'd like to see, I was kind of disappointed. I attended my first trustee of public funds meeting with the bank that they showed us the funds, and I was a little disappointed. I was the only one that was not part of, like, select board, or the trustees were all there, and no other people from the town of Chester were even there. So I thought there was no interest in how much money we actually have. And I think that should be known so that we all know what the money is, what the money was steered towards, and how much we're making off of that money. To me, it's like a 401k. I use it, you know, it should grow, but we should be using it appropriately. So I think they should be keeping track in an orderly manner of all the funds.
So why do you want to be a trustee of public funds?
I think I have the qualifications to do, I wrote this out because I want to bring fresh ideas and a new perspective to the Board of Trustees. I'd like to see them work better with the Select Board. When I attended that meeting, I thought there was a lot of tenseness in that meeting. The Select Board were very polite. They were trying to get to know what they could use the funds for, how to ask for it. And so I myself would, being from a corporation, United Healthcare, we did P&Ps, which are policy and procedures. I think there should be some. I don't know if there are any. I haven't looked into it that much, but that's the first thing I would do, is create policy and procedures so that there is no tenseness. This is what you do, this is how you do it, and then it gets approved or not, and a reason for the approval or not.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? If so, raise your hand and identify yourself, and you may come to the microphone. Yes, sir.
Peter Hutkins, I am a member of the Select Board. When I noticed at that meeting that the majority of the funds that are in those accounts are actually compounded interest, and that the funds that are determined that were donated for a specific purpose are much less than the total amount of money in there, and that the fund has actually been capitalizing fairly well. Would you spend some of that capital that is not, if it's interest, it's not part of the directed funds? Would you say, I'm looking for a stake to help a housing commission start, something like that, where we actually need the money to get going? There's money in there that's below what was elected for the will, and I'd like to see it kind of spent in that kind of way. Thank you.
Just to note, the year-over-year interest that we received was 4.80. I think that's a little low. I get on mine 7% year-over-year within a 10-year span. So that's one thing that I would also look at, is seeing, okay, how is it invested? Is it invested so that we can get the most off of that money? We have over $800,000 in all of the trustee of public funds. It's quite a sum. And you can take 4% a year easily, and it still grow, and it'll still keep growing. So it's not like we don't have the funds to help the budget, to help different projects, but also use it for its intended purpose.
Are there any other questions from the body? The floor, I should say? And no questions on Zoom? Shireen, thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Thank you.
we're going to take a brief moment to let Jareen return to the comforts of the floor, and we're now going to ask the Select Board candidates to come forth. We have 3 Select Board candidates. We have 3 seats, and so we're going to ask each of you to occupy a microphone with a seat. Lisa Rufa is not here tonight. She had a job requirement that took her away, so she unfortunately is not here, and so we will be delighted to introduce candidates for the 1-year term of Select Board. We know that Ariana Knapp is our incumbent Select Board person and is running for a 1-year term, and Tim Roper is running for a 1-year term. There are 2 terms or seats open, and there are 3 candidates. So we will start with our questions on the Select Board. First of all, Ariana, why do you want to serve on the Chester Select Board?
I can honestly say that if you asked me this a year ago when I was running for the first time, I would not have had an answer other than it feels like the right thing to do. Now that I have served for a year, I can tell you that it took 6 or 8 months to truly participate, engage, learn, and gain an understanding of how the Select Board operates. And in that time, I have become engaged in issues that are in front of the Select Board that I've started to care about deeply. And so 1 year was not enough time to see those issues through to a point where I could feel confident that we as a Select Board had had an impact. So I'd like to have another term so that I can continue the work that has been going on for the past year and continue to see through some of the projects or issues that we've had in front of us this past year.
Tim Roper, why do you want to serve on the Chester Select Board?
Thanks, Bill. I'll try not to go too long here, but I just start by saying I care deeply about this town. I came to Vermont in 1988 to do a 6-month construction project. We built cable TV systems. And the first time I rode through Chester, I fell in love with it. My wife and I were married. We moved to Chester. We spent a couple years here renting. We moved to Springfield, and we came back and bought our home here in 1993. Raised our kids. I've always been involved somewhat in the community through youth sports. My wife was on the school board. And most recently, I've been on the Planning Commission for the last 7 years. I feel like the current board works very well together. I think there's room. They've shown that there's room for discussion and opposing points of view and find a way to collaborate and compromise and work things out. I think I'm somebody who can step into that group and continue that collaboration. Certainly we all have our own unique points of view on things, but I'm happy to discuss and learn. As Ariana said, you can't step onto a board like the governing a town and know everything to start with, so I'll probably be quiet most of the time, much of the time. Okay, some of the time. I also feel like where we are right now as a town, it's a pretty crucial time where we're trying to deal with budgets and inflation and housing issues. I just think there are a lot of important issues, and I feel like I could help the town to work through those, and I want to be able to do that.
Thank you. Ariana, what do you see as the biggest issue facing Chester, and how would you work to resolve it?
Softball question, right, Bill? Housing or affordable housing or a sustainable economy that allows other people to move in. Are they all the same thing? Mostly. I feel very strongly that encouraging growth, encouraging investment in affordable housing, those are a priority, but you can't look at those without also looking at how do you make it sustainable for the folks that already live here? How do we maintain the services we have at the level we have them without having the burden go on the long-term residents? How do we convince new investment in business and housing in a way that joins our community, grows our community, supports our community, is part of our community, and continues to help us afford to create, build, and sustain the services that we have here in Chester right now? How would I work to resolve that issue? Continue to support the people that are doing the research, continue to pay attention, explore, and be open to new ideas. Affordable housing is everything, from apartment buildings, duplexes, mobile homes, mobile home parks. We need to look at everything. It's the whole state, it's not just Chester. We need to look at Chester first, and then we need to figure out how to make the most of the initiatives that are happening in the state and federally so that we can get the support we need. So I think housing, more opportunity for people to move in.
Tim, what do you see as the biggest issue in Chester, and how would you work to resolve that issue?
Well, it certainly seems that housing is our biggest challenge right now. I don't want to sound like I'm parroting what Ariana just said, but I think she pretty much nailed it. Everything kind of centers around people having affordable places to live and raise their family, the enrollment in the schools. It's crucial that families have a place to live. You know, we were fortunate when we bought our home in 1993, we could do that on fairly small salaries. I don't know how people are doing that today. And I don't pretend to know what the answers are. I do know that the current board and our excellent town manager were very wise in creating a housing commission. I think that's a great step forward. I attended one of the Housing Commission meetings via Zoom and was impressed with everybody in that group, with their dedication, with their work ethic. It's not an easy problem to solve. In our current, just to give you an example, if you could afford to build a new home today, by the time you finished it and had it appraised, it would be worth less than what it cost you to build it. Wow. How do we get new housing? So again, I don't pretend to have those answers, but I want to support the Housing Commission and the board and all the town government to try to find those solutions, because everything is anchored in that. And I also think that we need to work to help attract more business here. We need good jobs for people so they can live and afford to live here and buy a home and put their kids in the school. So I think those two things probably go together as well.
So Tim, continuing with your answer, your comment as you were ending, I want you to respond to the next question. If elected, how would you work to help the business community in Chester, and how would you work to promote economic development in our town?
That's a tough question for me. I don't know the answer to that. I know that there are, to quote Bill McKibben, you know, there's no silver bullet to solve these problems. We got to find the silver birdshot, and it's a lot of little pieces that have to come together to make things work. The Planning Commission work that's been done has, I think, done a pretty good job of trying to remove some barriers to business as far as permitting issues and streamline that process, so that's one piece. Maybe there's some, I can only speculate, maybe there are some things we could do to market and help bring more people here. You know, we do have a few empty buildings and business spaces here, so I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what, you know, we're a Dillon's rule state. I don't know if everybody knows what that means. We can only do as a town what the state allows us to do. We have to follow the state statutes. So I don't know, I haven't looked into what we're allowed to do. Can we market for bringing businesses in? Is that a good use of town funds? I'm not sure. We have to look at that as an investment. I do know it's an area that we need to put some energy into, and I'm willing to do that. I know there are a lot of smart people here, and I think if we collaborate, we can find some solutions.
Thank you. Ariana, if the same question, if elected, how would you work to help the business community in Chester? Particularly, how would you work to promote economic development in our town?
To build on what Tim said, I think the key is to let potential business owners and potential business investors understand what they get if they come to Chester. So as far as marketing or not, I know that at home I have an antique magazine from 1903, I believe, which is advertising all the farmland in Vermont. And it was put out by the state of Vermont. It was turn of the century, and it was basically come to Vermont and buy a farm. That model feels like it could actually be where we need to head to a certain extent. Now, to be specific, the Chester Business Coalition exists. We need to tap into it. We need to talk to them. We need to talk to the folks that are successfully running businesses in Chester. Because the challenge I see, as one of many people in town who take advantage of fiber optic internet, I am not retired. I work full-time. I work full-time using the internet. So I think we, as a community, need to figure out what are the businesses that make sense in Chester. Is it furniture construction? We have successful businesses throughout Chester which are in the service community. So we have a lot of property maintenance and related fields. Does it make sense to invite a carpet cleaning company to come in? Like, do we look at what we've got and find out what the puzzle piece that's missing and go find the business? It doesn't make sense to have yet another small automobile repair shop in town, because we're doing okay there. What we need to figure out is what's the gap that we fill better than anybody else, and then go find those businesses. It's naive, but underlying it is the truth. It's up to us to figure out what's going to work, and then let's figure out how to entice that business here. And I say all this, one other aspect that I feel very strongly about, which relates to the budget. This town is phenomenal with the services, the resources, the community, the structure of what this municipality is or has become over the past couple decades. We have a budget that feels pretty tough to swallow right now, but that's because we have amazing crew, staff, resources, but now we need to tell the world we've got it, okay? We've built it. Now we need to make businesses come, more families come, invite them to partake of these amazing services we've built so that we don't have to give them up, okay? We live here. We benefit from what has been built. I don't want that to go away. But if you look at the select board and say you've got to cut hundreds of thousands of dollars, then it's services that go. So I would prefer we bring in more residents, businesses, more people to help fill the tax rolls so that we can continue to enjoy what has been built here and we don't have to begin to chip away at it.
With Ariana, the rising costs of inflation and municipal budgets getting tighter, how would you work to balance the community growth, as you've been describing, with trying to maintain or neutralize our property tax increases?
To restate what I said before, I think my focus is on growing the tax base and not increasing the budget. We have grown so successfully up to this point. We've really crossed a great boundary, as is evidenced by the response to the 2 storms we had the past year. This town came out of those storms remarkably compared to the towns around us due to the infrastructure we have here. So that's been demonstrated. I think we are where we need to be. Let's maintain and sustain and grow the tax base.
Tim, what do you
I'll
say to that?
I'll echo, we need to grow the grand list, and, you know, that comes back to housing, and it's not an easy problem to solve. Everybody in this room and everybody in town expects the town to provide the services that it does, and our town has done a fabulous job of doing that. Again, to echo Ariana, you have 2 choices. You can either come up with more money, to, even if we don't add anything, we're dealing with inflation. Everything costs more today. And that's been a big challenge, especially in this current budget. I think the town manager and the select board did a great job with the current budget to keep the increases as low or not being more than they already are. It's a difficult challenge, and it's one that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of collaboration from smart people who may be bringing in some consultants or utilizing the regional planning folks who've really helped the Planning Commission a lot in our current work. So we're going to have to explore those options, but the ultimate answer is grow the grand list so that we generate more tax revenue to help support the town.
Thank you. From the floor, are there any questions? If you do, raise your hand and be identified, and then come up to the mic in front if you would like to ask a question of these 2 candidates. Yes, sir. You are.
Randy Miles.
The mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. My question, you've answered it somewhat with housing and stuff like that, but I feel we really need to attract families, and I don't know how we can get families here to bring in their kids, because the school is down, it's dropping. We need to get families to come into our beautiful little town, and I don't know if you've got any ideas how to attract families to our towns.
Well, I think it's all the things that we just talked about. We need affordable places for people to live. I know you're running for school board, Randy, and so you know this very well, that as the enrollment drops, the overhead costs don't, and the subsidies that come from the federal government and from the state drop based on enrollment. So clearly, we need more families here, but they have to have a place to live. And I know from last year, I heard stories, I think there were 2 different teachers that had accepted positions at Green Mountain who had to then rescind their acceptance because they couldn't find a place to live. So housing.
Yeah.
Ariana?
I agree that it's about having a place to live and having a place they can afford to live. But I also think it can inform pursuit of business. It can inform economic development. So keeping in mind that we are hoping to attract families, also because a young family is the list. I think it's more accurate to say we want to build our community. Who can we invite in? Who can we make this an attractive town to live in? And ideally, that will be young families, which will be young workforce, which will be folks that invest in the town and are here and hopefully eventually sit up here and serve on the select board, because that's ideally the community we want to build.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Are there other questions from the floor? Yes, ma'am. Come up, please.
Hi, I'm Carrie Roy King. And you were mentioning growing the grand list and inviting people to, or finding ways to attract people to this community. And I would argue that members of the Chester community have faced numerous challenges over the last number of years with inclusivity and welcoming people to this community. For example, we had to pay $50,000 with our police department's settlement of a claim for racially profiling a person in town. The school board spent tremendous amounts of money in 2023 defending a divisive school mascot that was a violation of state law that had been passed in 2023. So these are issues that have come to this town. In addition, I must mention, the Whiting Library suffered a censorship challenge when we tried to invite drag story hour performers to our library. In addition, the town had a lot of pushback when it did finally pass its inclusivity statement. So my question for you and the school board candidates is, essentially, these are just 2 or 3 examples of expensive incidences that have highlighted the divisions within our community and have raised concerns about inclusivity and fairness for everyone in this community. If elected, how do you plan to lead in fostering a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere within the boards you will serve on? And what specific steps will you take to address these past issues and prevent similar ones from arising in the future? Because it's not just about growing your tax base. In order to do that, you need to welcome people of all varieties.
Carrie, thank you. While I have opinions about a lot of the things that you've mentioned, the select board, from what I've seen in the last year, is not presented with these issues. We are not participatory on the school leadership with the school board or anything like that. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of what we address is pretty dry and does not come with this type of opportunity to prioritize things based on welcoming or not welcoming or those issues. So how would I lead? I hope that I would continue to model a welcoming and open and embracing approach to everything I participate in. So as a human being, absolutely, I intend to continue to lead the way I live. As far as a select board and how would we organize the select board in any way or differently, or how we would do that in that role, I would have to think on that. It doesn't come up. I mean, in a year of what we've done, the issues you've addressed don't come to the select board. So I can tell you that I embrace the welcoming statement that was signed before I was elected. I agree with it. I think it's important and good. And as a human being, I completely agree that that's critically important. And how we welcome people and how we invite people in is not done from the select board or an ordinance or anything like that. It's in creating the housing commission, the economic development mandates, how we direct people. So yes, I firmly believe that welcoming, encouraging folks from all walks of life, from every aspect of the planet, to be here and participate in our community would be a priority.
Tim?
Well, I have to say that I was thinking along the same lines. I'm not sure what the select board can specifically do. I know personally I was a big supporter of the Declaration of Inclusivity that was passed in the previous term, not the current board, but the previous board. I do know that our town manager has put a lot of work into the police department. I don't know, I'm not on the inside of any of that, but I'm impressed with our new chief, what little interactions I've had with him. I feel like his attitude is one of inclusivity, but I don't know that for a fact. I guess it's a hope. Again, I'll echo Ariana. I'm an open person. I deal with people on a one-on-one basis, and I think most people are good-hearted. And sometimes people are taken aback by something that they're not used to. So I think all we can do is model being accepting and inclusive.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the board, or the floor, or even from the board? No. Yes, sir. You are?
David Carey.
Thank you.
Several months ago, the town of Chester received an OREPA grant of, I think it was about $900,000. And reading in the Chester Telegraph, the people of Chester were invited to send their suggestions as to how this money, $900,000, might be spent. I understand some of it has already been spent, and the town report will have details on that, I'm sure. My question to you is, should the town of Chester be fortunate enough to receive a similar largesse in the very near future, what specific project or activity or thing would you like to see such largesse given to?
Tim, what do you say?
Well, that's a great question, and one that probably would require some mulling on my part to provide a good answer. I think, Ariana mentioned our infrastructure recently. I know there are some projects underway that have, as is typical, I've learned in town government, take a long time to get completed. We have a sidewalk project and some other things that have been funded. Unfortunately, maybe that funding is also suffering under inflation, and I'm not sure what the ramifications of that will be. But it feels to me like infrastructure is an important part. If we make the town look nice and be easy to move around through, walkability, I think, is important. I'd love to see a sidewalk to the high school. That's one thing. As I'm talking here, some ideas are marinating, but I think that's something that's come up previously, and I think that would be a great thing for our town, for the school, for the kids, safety. There are a lot of reasons for that. Personally, I also, thinking of sidewalks, I'd love to see a sidewalk. We used to walk the loop, we called it, the 3-mile loop. Everybody knows what that is, right, over Church Street, and that stretch over Church Street has no sidewalk. That'd be a great place to see a sidewalk. Are there other things? Probably, but that's what's, off the top of my head, that's what I've got for you.
Ariana, what do you think?
In this case, I have the distinct advantage of currently serving on the Select Board. So I would probably leap to invest in the solar field because the expectation would hopefully be that eventually everybody would see the benefit. If we were given another beautiful grant from nowhere to do with, again, to be dry, I would want us to find a balance of investment in the future, offsetting current costs to the taxpayers, and capital investment. So whatever that is, what we've constantly got to battle is today's tax bill versus tomorrow's services, and sidewalks or affordable housing, how do we get that now, since the people who are going to live there can't pay for it now? So finding ways to invest in the future, but offsetting the costs of today. I would want to split it.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Then we will thank the candidates for Select Board and take a brief moment for switch and invite the school board candidates to come forward.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, everyone.
We've been doing this, gentlemen, if you would like to come up and take your seat. We've been doing this since 6:30. It's now about 7 after 7. I think our timing is good. We've had two different sections, 3 candidates, and I believe that if this continues as it is, that we may very well be ending before 7:45, maybe earlier. So I think unless you have any concerns, the schedule that we are maintaining is working, and we thank the candidates who have spoken, and gentlemen. We are going to introduce Randy Miles, Casey Leahy, and Tuck Wonderly, who are the 3 candidates for the Green Mountain Unified School District board seats. There are 2 open, and there are 3 candidates. So we will start our questions. And Tuck, I'm going to start with you, and we'll work down and in and around. Why do you want to serve on the school board as a director?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tuck Wonderly. I was born and raised here in Chester. I absolutely love this town. It's a big part of who I am and kind of the person that exists here in front of you. I grew up attending Chester Andover Elementary School and then later Green Mountain Union High School. Those institutions really provided me with an incredibly sound base that I'm very proud of, and kind of allowed me to go out into the world. I went to school in Boston for a while and then returned home to live here. And a lot of the success and happiness that I enjoy in my life, fortunate enough to enjoy, started in those buildings. I care a lot about them, and I think it's a little bit of see a need, fill a need. If I'm able to provide something for the school and for the community, I feel a social responsibility to at least try to do that to the best of my ability. And I think it could be kind of interesting as well. I've served as Justice of the Peace here for a year. I'm on the Board of Civil Authority. I also assisted in hiring Chester's police chief, and I've been on other boards, various local community groups. So I've enjoyed all those experiences, and I'm confident that I'd enjoy this one too.
Casey, why do you want to serve as a school board director?
So, excuse me, my interest in serving on the school board here is mostly driven by having 2 young children in the school system. So I am deeply invested in them. You know, they're my life. And they're going to be spending the most formative years of their life coming up through this school system. You know, we're residents here, we're not going anywhere. So I'm very interested to be involved and gain some perspective and understanding of the school board, of its function, and of the issues it's been facing. You know, I'll tell you, I don't have a really good understanding of the school board, its bylaws, its limitations, its operation, but I'm interested and I'm invested in it, not only as a taxpayer, but as a parent. I have perhaps the most skin in the game as far as the financial piece as a taxpayer and the true interest as a parent of children in the school system. And I want them to succeed. I want the school to succeed. I have a kind of cursory understanding of some of the issues the school has been facing. We heard earlier about enrollment has consistently been on the decline, and that overhead cost still exists. It's just actually increasing with inflation. That's been mentioned a few times. And I don't know exactly what options we have, but what better way in my eyes to find out what our options are and what we can do to help influence that positively than to get involved. And as I've said, I've pled ignorance a little bit about not knowing a lot about the school board, having not been involved previously. So why am I jumping straight to running for school board rather than attending some meetings? I'm sure some of you are wondering that. I've learned through my experience with work and union involvement that I really like to get into things deep. I don't want to dip my toe in the water. I want to jump into the pool. And if I'm going to put my time and energy into something, I want to have a say. I want to have a seat at the table. So, not to be long-winded, I really don't want to take an outside seat at this. I'm deeply invested in the school's success and future, and I want to have a part in that.
Thank you. Randy, why do you want to serve as a school director?
Thank you all for coming tonight. I've lived here for almost 20 years now. We moved to this town because of the town and because of the school. We researched a lot of different towns, and we just fell in love with this town, and we've been here since. The school board has had its ups and downs, and lately it's had a lot of downs. And I feel that I can bring something different to them. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid, you know, to talk back and forth and listen to everybody's side. I want to hear all information. I base my decisions on the true facts and information that is presented to us. I think the board is on a curve heading upward now. I think we're through a lot of the worst of it, and this is a good thing for this community in town, but we have to find ways to attract more families for our school because the numbers are really low. The other reason is the budgeting. If you look at the last 4 or 5 years, it's just soaring. And in another 4 or 5 years, we're going to really have to make some really hard decisions on what to do. Or we're going to have to look at possibly even closing these schools and being bused to other schools, bigger schools. So I feel we really need somebody who's going to be in there and ask the tough questions and start making decisions more sooner than later. The schools want everything they can get, and I get that. Teachers want it. Everybody wants the school to grow, but we really have to look at these budgets that are growing and try and find some way of keeping them under control as much as possible. And that's my reasoning.
Thank you. So Casey, what do you see is the biggest issue facing our school district, and how would you work to resolve that issue?
Well, as I said, I don't have a really deep understanding of the school's issues. The most pressing issue I'm aware of is the continuing decline in enrollment and the continually increasing costs. And that's a really tough thing to challenge and tackle. And that's been talked about quite a bit tonight, as far as how do we increase the tax roll and build our town and build our community and support this school and keep it on the right track. I feel I won't have any real good input or decisions on that from the outside, and that's why I want to be on the board, so I can have that inside seat, have the discussions and the facts, as Randy was saying. You know, I also like to have all the information. I want to know exactly what we're talking about, what are the pieces on the table, and what are the rules we have to play by. And I don't feel I can really get a handle on that or be a positive part of that from the outside.
Thank you. Randy, what do you see as the biggest issue facing our school district, and how would you work to resolve or address the issue?
I guess our biggest issue that I see at this point is getting the board to work as a board. They're so divided that we have to turn something new. We have to learn to work with the facts, sit down and talk about things honestly, openly, and most of all, respectfully. And I feel we've lost that. So I'm hoping I can bring some of that to this table. And, yeah.
Thank you. Tuck, and what do you see as the biggest issue facing the school district, and what would your steps be to address that issue?
Yeah, I want to thank you both for your responses. I think both the fiscal side of things and the issue of cooperation amongst the board are incredibly important right now. The school board, as you mentioned, Randy, has definitely gone through a tumultuous time. I don't think anyone here in the room would say that any of the issues that they've faced over the past few years have been simple or easy to solve. I don't know that anyone in this room has an answer for a lot of those issues. I certainly don't feel that I know right now what the answer is, but I think if you look at the reports from the state in terms of kind of fiscally what's needed from our schools and kind of the situation we're in terms of lowering enrollment, similar overhead costs, and a slew of other issues, we're going into a time now where these are going to be really tough problems to solve. And I feel like we need a board that functions well together, can work together to create complex solutions to what are sure to be complex problems. And I also think that, personally, I guess, what I see as being a big issue is a lack of sense of community trust and transparency between the school board and the community. I feel like as we tackle these problems and try to work together, we need to be doing it in a way where the community can be ensured that they have the right people for the job. Feel confident in the people that they've selected to kind of lead them through these incredibly difficult times. And I think that can only happen by fostering a more cooperative relationship, being open and honest about our budgetary problems, and also reaching out and interacting and interfacing with the community and hearing from the people. What are the issues that are important to them, and how can we work in a way that ensures that those people feel heard and are heard, and ultimately feel like they have a board that is really exceptional, because I think that's what Chester deserves.
Thank you. So Randy, can you describe your understanding of education funding in Vermont?
That's a tough one, but basically, the short of it all is a combination of local control through the school board budget and taxpayers, and then the state working together and submitting a final budget for everything. There's a lot of different formulas they're coming up with now, but it's a very tough situation. For myself, I'm new to the board, so there's a lot I have to learn, but I've been looking at a lot of different numbers through the budgets and stuff like that, and there's a lot of questions that I have to ask and find out myself. But I feel we, as a community, need to really lock in our best budget that we can possibly do before we submit it to the state, and the state has also got to do their end. The school blames the state for being high, the state blames the school for being high. I think they're actually both right. So that's my understanding, is as much as I know now, that we really have to get a handle on our budgets and do the best we possibly can before we give it back to the community to vote on it.
So Tuck, would you describe your understanding of education funding in Vermont?
Yeah, Bill, if you asked me that a week ago, I don't know what I would have responded with. I've done a lot of research and reading over the past few days, and it is really complex on a number of levels. As I understand it, the school board drafts a budget, which is funded through the state's education fund, reimbursing them, which has a relationship to everyone's property taxes. That's a tricky situation because the school board is developing a budget that then goes up to the state and then is compensated by people in the community. And that makes it difficult for folks to know, okay, how is this budget proposal going to impact my taxes? It's been made only more complicated over the past year through Act 127. Which was a tried and failed attempt by the legislature to advantage disadvantaged communities and low-income communities. I won't get all into the wonky details of that because I will talk for 30 minutes and won't make much sense. But as I understand it, the state capped the amount that property taxes could increase at 5% across all districts for the first 5 years, with the idea that folks and school boards in lower income and disadvantaged communities would be incentivized to spend more on their community without worrying that property taxes were going to skyrocket. Unfortunately, what happened is that all districts decided to spend in a way that brought everyone up to that cap really quickly. And that money isn't free, it has to come from somewhere. And so whereas a few years ago there was a surplus in the state fund, which led to programs like universal free meals for students, now that fund is really strained based on where we are now. And it's tricky because we don't have a lot of money available, and with inflation, with rising healthcare costs, with needed infrastructure improvements, the total bill for infrastructure improvements for our schools statewide, I think is, it's in the billions of dollars. I think 6.7 billion was the figure I saw. That's astronomical, and they're needed improvements. And we don't have the money to pay for it anymore. So we're in this really tricky situation. I do believe just now, recently, of the past week or so, the governor signed a bill reversing a lot of those Act 127 policies, which I think is the first step in the right direction. And now it's up for the state legislature to look at an overhaul or a renovation of how education's funded in the state, and how that trickles down and affects school boards and our local budgets is kind of yet to be seen. So we're in a unique position where the whole system might be changing. Nobody really knows how much it's changing. But I think I'd agree with Randy in that regardless of what the system is, we need to be doing our best to make sure we have a budget that is fiscally responsible and sustainable, but also gives children in Chester and the surrounding towns access to the best possible education, because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about.
Thank you. Casey, what is your understanding of education funding in Vermont? You're in an, I'm going to help you. You're in an unfortunate position, but we're looking forward to how you can say, I agree with both of them, and then give us I'm giving you extra time to think.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit of the same of what Tuck said. I did look into it recently to try to gain some understanding, get some grasp of it. And it is an odd system we have where we draft our budgets locally, send it up to Montpelier, and then they kind of parse things out from a central statewide level. So we have kind of a local control and then a centralized control that conflict. And it's really a mess looking at it from a kind of logical perspective. I'm looking at it going, well, this seems like a problem as a statewide system, but locally, I don't think we can affect that. That's a legislative issue. But as far as local controls and the board, and I agree with both, as far as coming up with a fiscally responsible budget and looking at what services really need to be in that budget and funded. Education, of course, this is a school, that's the top priority. That's my top priority as a parent of children in the school. Is there extra stuff that maybe we can look at trimming? Then that's what we need to look at to make that fiscally responsible budget. So, I don't have a, very in-depth understanding of this yet, but I have, I'd like to learn more, and I am, very, very energized to being fiscally responsible.
Thank you. Our school board in the recent years has had some apparent unpleasant interactions among members, community people. Tuck, how would you work with a person with whom you might disagree with to reach compromise?
Yeah, it's America. We all have personal beliefs, right? I think that's what makes this country amazing. I think that's the reason why we're not still a British colony. Personal beliefs and differences in beliefs are what communities like this and the nation that we're all a part of was founded on. And I don't think that is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. It allows for more diverse perspectives in the world and the way we approach problems. It allows us to come up with unique and synergetic solutions for issues. Where I do think it's a problem is when it gets in the way of people coming to those solutions and creating those unique answers. I think personal beliefs are great, but having a paddle in a canoe isn't any good if you're rowing in the opposite direction as the person across from you. We have to recognize that while we all feel very strongly about the issues that kind of face our society right now, staying where we are is not the answer. And if everyone is paddling in different directions, you stay where you are. So I think while I have a lot of respect for people's beliefs and the different experiences and positions that they come from in life, I also think it's imperative that we focus on what this is actually all about. Like Casey, what you're saying, this is about education. It's about helping our children have the best possible chance at a successful life. And if our own beliefs and feelings and opinions are going to get in the way of ensuring that our children can have the best possible chance at a successful future, those beliefs don't mean anything. And so I don't know if that's an answer to the question, but I think that's kind of my perspective on the issue, that while everyone needs to feel that they're heard and respected and appreciated in this community, we also need to look at those different opinions and find a way to bring them together, find a compromise or find a solution that moves our community forward, because staying where we are is not the right idea.
Thank you. Casey, how would you work with people with whom you may have fundamental disagreements in order to reach a compromise or a solution?
Well, I've had a fair bit of practice at this, working for the state and being involved with my union. We recently negotiated a contract, and that was rife with disagreement, to put it. So I have quite a bit of experience dealing with this. For me, the way I approach these situations of opposing opinions, opposing beliefs of how to challenge something or fix something, is sticking to, first of all, what's our mission? Why are we here? And to me, this is a school board, the mission is education. So we have to keep our eyes focused on that. That's why we're here. I'm not here for personal beliefs, political beliefs. I'm here to ensure that my kids have a good future. All right, so first, if we can establish that, that's the basis of my mindset, and try to remind everybody at the table, that's why we're here. And then, as Randy spoke about earlier, what are the facts? What are we actually dealing with? And let's get down to then creating solutions based on the facts or the resources available. all right? To me, it's a very simple process, and yes, there's going to be conflict, there always is. But if we could stay focused on the mission, which is providing our children and our community with the best education system that we can, and then just building from that based on what do we have to do that? How can we accomplish that? And we can do that with differing opinions. As long as we stay focused on the same goals and we're all motivated to work towards the same thing, then even with differing personal beliefs or opinions on things, we can come together and compromise. Because you can come to compromise and make solutions with people who have different opinions and beliefs than you without compromising your own beliefs. And if you don't believe that that's possible, then you shouldn't be a part of an organization like this, because that's part of the deal.
Thank you. Randy, how would you interact with people with whom you may fundamentally disagree to reach resolution?
First of all, I'd like to see the direct point of any issue that crops up. There's always going to be disagreements, but we need to focus on what exactly the main issue is without overstepping our powers and trying to solve everything with one meeting or several meetings. I feel that overstepping the power just creates more problem and more arguing. Anybody that gets on a board should be under the understanding that we are open-minded, we're here to serve our community. We're not here for ourselves. So I'm more than willing to listen to any conversation. I gain information by listening to somebody's difference. I always look for that in anything. So I feel that's a strong point for me. I don't believe that yelling and screaming is going to accomplish anything and has no place on any board. We're here to be respectful. We're here to serve you and our community and our students and our teachers and our faculty. And those are the important things. But pinpointing any target that seems to be a main issue is crucial. And if you don't talk about that first, you just leave it wide open for so much interpretation. Hit the issue, deal with it, and move on to the next. Dwelling on it is just going to cost a lot of aggravation down the line. And that's what I have to say on it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Zoom? From the floor, are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have one. My name is Beverly. My last name is Hart. First, I just want to comment on the bit about being inclusive with the town and the school. I think it's one thing to say, but it's another thing to do. And I think it's really time to make Chester be the one to show how that's done. So I think that's something that we really need to work on. The question I have for the school board is, for each one of you, could you support a board decision you did not vote in favor of? Why or why not?
Well, let's start with Casey. Repeat the question. Or do you want her to repeat the question?
So your question was, could I support a board decision that I did not vote in favor of?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Can you support a board decision that you did not vote in favor of? So if you voted no and the rest of the board voted yes, how would you continue to support it? Why or why not?
So I guess what I don't understand about the question is what you mean by support it. So if it's been voted through and it's enacted, then it's happening regardless, right? So even if I didn't agree with it, if it's going on, then it goes on. I can still have my own opinion about it, and if I voted no against it, and, you know, I'm sure I had my reason, and if people wanted to talk about it, I would talk about it. I have, you know, in my professional experience, been in situations where I voted no for something and was, you know, on the losing end of that vote, and you have to deal with it. You can't win everything in life, but at the same time, I'm always willing to talk to people about why I voted the way I voted, or why I made the decision I made, and how I came to that decision. You know, but you have to be able to work and move forward. So I'm guessing there's some backstory, some context to this that I'm missing, and I kind of wish I had that so I could give you a better answer. So I guess the best I can tell you is I have been on the, you know, the losing end of votes or decisions in my professional experience. And I work forward, and I'm always open about the decisions I make. I believe in transparency. I'm big on that. You know, I learned a lot, like I said, I've mentioned this a few times with the union activity. I'm happy to report out to my people and tell them exactly what's going on, the decisions I've made, the things I've supported, the things I've not supported. It's part of the process. You know, we're up here in a public role, so we have to be able to explain and stand by the decisions we make, how we vote, and, you know, face the outcomes.
Thank you. Randy, how would you respond to the question?
Basically, you're going to have that through any board. There's going to be disagreements and votes that aren't going to go your way, and that's a given. You've got to take that and let it go and move on to the next. If you don't, you're going to dwell on it, and nobody's going to accomplish anything. And that's kind of the person I am. I give it my all, and what happens, happens, and then it's time to move on. And that's really all I have to say about that. You just cannot dwell on it. Got to let it go and move on and accept it and make the best of it, you know, whatever passes through.
Thank you. Tuck?
Yeah, thank you, Beverly, for the question. I think I'd echo a lot of what Casey said. If it's happening, and we'll move forward. To address your question, though, I think, and kind of to go back to my earlier point about community trust and the sense of shared responsibility, if I vote no on something that ends up going through and I'm in Smitty's and you ask me, why the heck did you let that go through? I think I would do my best to explain in an open and honest way the perspective that I had in voting no, and also the perspective of the board and the points that kind of led people to vote yes. I pride myself in being able to see both sides of almost any issue, even if I don't agree with one of those sides. And I think when you're building or trying to rebuild a sense of trust with the community, it's important to be able to talk to folks when you meet them in your daily life in a way that is respectful, transparent, and honest about what goes on in sessions that not everyone can attend. And so I guess that would be my response.
Thank you. Are there any questions further? Yes, sir.
My name is Lee Gustafson, and you've talked a lot about the primary role of the school board and the schools is to educate our kids. And the question I have is, are we doing a good job educating our kids today? And if not, how would you improve the schools? Thank you.
So let's start with Randy. Randy, what do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't believe that we are at this moment in time. I believe we've got a ways to go. I believe we're turning the corner with administration that's been hired and different things that are falling in line, but I think we got a ways to go. Our test scores are mediocre at best on some of these things, and I don't feel we're putting enough toward actually the kids learning. The money and energy is going other places on a lot of things. I really want to see more focus, you know, given to the teachers so that the kids can learn more. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Tuck, what do you think?
Yeah, when I was at Green Mountain, I felt that I got a good education. I don't feel necessarily qualified to speak on it now, but what I would say is that the world is changing very rapidly. 5 years ago, we never would have had this screen in here. And I think as we start to prepare children not only for the world that we now live in, but the world that they will be living in 20 years from now, what education looks like is going to have to change. I think it's going to have to be more information-driven and communications-driven. The economy of information is a very real thing now, and that's where a lot of our jobs are. But we also need to foster the trades and foster people that work with their hands and know how to repair our infrastructure. So the way that we approach education, I think, needs to respond to the way that our world is and will continue to develop in the future, because that's something that's much bigger than any one of us. What I'd say in addition to that is when I was at Green Mountain, I was fortunate enough to be in band. I did plays, I was on the soccer team, enjoyed math, science, as well as reading, literature, pretty much every subject. And I think ensuring that while things move to a more digital reality, ensuring that we still have the diverse opportunities for all our students is going to be essential. I'm not so sure how the actual in-classroom learning experience has changed since I've been at Green Mountain, but I do know that it will have to change to address kind of the world we're living in and where we're moving forward.
Thank you. Casey?
So, as far as are we doing a good job or a bad job right now, I'm not sure I would say either, but I would certainly say we can do better. I have 2 young kids in school, and I have a lot of questions when they come home from school. And I don't know how much of this is locally driven or statewide driven. I know the Department of Education has a lot of control and a lot of say. But some of the things, maybe I'm old-fashioned, the kids don't have homework, and I don't understand that. I think that's important for them, and I don't know if that's a local decision or a statewide decision, but that's one example where I see, I don't understand that piece. We can do better. It's part of teaching the kids responsibility, and sometimes there's work outside of the office or the classroom or what have you. And as far as we've talked about enrollment dropping and overhead not changing, right? We have a large school. We're utilizing about 50% of its capacity, from what I understand. So our student-to-teacher ratios are really, really good. I think our student-to-teacher ratio average through the district is probably maybe 20 students to 1 teacher. That's incredible. That's an incredible ratio. I grew up in upstate New York, and even upstate New York, there was at least 40 kids in a classroom. So we've got twice the student, or half the student-to-teacher ratio. So in my mind, we should be having a better return on investment. There should be a lot more achievement academically if we have that higher ratio, that better ratio. And we've talked about test scores not being where they should be. And even statewide, I've seen the statewide numbers, and it's not great, and I don't understand it. So I want to understand what's going on. What are these kids doing all day? Can we refocus some energy and some resources and bring that achievement level up?
Thank you. Are there any questions further? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Donna Hudkins. I'm going to preface my question. I worked for the Two Rivers Supervisory Union for 6 years, and I went through 3 superintendents in the time I was there, and now I know we have another superintendent. I want to know how important you all think it is to work with the superintendent of schools who, because I worked there, are pretty into that's what their background is education and what's to be done. Thank you.
So we are going to let Randy start with that.
I think that's a great question.
Now, excuse me, repeat the question. And I could repeat it, but since you're about to answer it, would you repeat the question?
How important is it to work with a superintendent?
Go ahead.
I think it's very crucial. I think it's key having the right person for the right job. And when that happens, things can really move in a positive direction. I think we're fortunate enough for the superintendent we have now. He's extremely educated. He's willing to work both sides and work to avoid conflicts. He's done great things with his previous school, so I'm really excited, for him to be a part of our school system. It's crucial for the board to have some insight from the superintendent, and it's good to have a working relationship with them. So I think it's going to be a benefit for the students, the school, and our community that this is a working partnership. Thank you.
So Tuck, how do you understand the question to be?
How important is it for the school board to have a functioning relationship with the superintendent?
So what do you think?
I would agree with Randy. I think it's crucial. In terms of, I see it two ways. One is kind of what you're addressing, Donna, where if you're someone working in the school system and you basically have a new person running the show every couple of years or so, that doesn't let you do a good job. You have to constantly be changing and adjusting to a new kind of system. And it also doesn't give a sense of continuity. We heard from Ariana earlier, it takes a number of months just to understand the issues, let alone start to address them. So I feel like for a superintendent to really be qualified to understand the issues that the district is facing or the schools are facing and kind of figure out a plan of action and lead them forward, you need that continuity over a long period of time. The other way I see it is that as far as I understand, the school board functions a little bit like the game of telephone, where students tell the teachers a problem, they might bring it up with the principal, maybe the principal tells the superintendent, and by the time it gets to the school board, it's gone through a lot of different iterations. We've all played that game. The school board members can't be in every classroom every day, so I think ensuring that you have a working relationship with the people that are bringing those issues up to you and can understand kind of where they're coming from and their perspective on things and what's important to them. Randy, like you were saying, I think it's imperative for a functioning system. So, absolutely.
So Casey, what does the question mean to you, and what do you think? What is the question?
What the importance of the school board working with the superintendent is, and I guess how that relationship works. So you said 3 superintendents in 6 years? Okay, so to me, that's an alarming level of turnover, which raises a lot of questions and alarms in my mind. That's a high-level position to turn over that frequently. Something's broken from the quick outside analysis. So we got to figure out what that is and fix that. Maybe it's not working with the superintendent because there clearly needs to be a functioning collaboration, right? And again, I don't have the greatest understanding of the school board and how exactly everything works, but clearly you need collaboration between your school board, your superintendent, and then the staff at the schools itself. And then that's, again, really high-level turnover. So is the school's decline in academics, other issues over the last 6 years? It's got to be directly tied to that in my mind, because you can't really figure out that level of a position. 2 years' time, you've probably really just figured it out. And if you figured it out and then walked out the door immediately, that's a problem. Something's wrong. So that kind of gives me more drive to be at the table and figure out what's going on. Because if we're going to right the ship in any direction, be it academics, finances, we need stability. You can't have constant turnover and instability for anything to function, whether it's a school, a business, or a community. So hopefully the school board could work with a very, have a collaborative, positive relationship with that superintendent. Because again, if we're all aligned on the same mission, which is the school and the academics, we should be able to achieve that goal.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question and say that we are now at the end, and it's been a very full evening, and I want to thank these three candidates, the other candidates we've had. Thank you all, and thank you for being here and asking good questions and listening and just being supportive. Our town meeting is on the 6th day of March? No. It's on the 5th day of March. But the town meeting itself is on Monday night. The 4th, thank you. And that's right after Bill's birthday on the 31st, is that right? And the school, no, that Bill behind you, not right behind you. And the school meeting is on the 29th at Green Mountain Union High School at 6:00 p.m. So we have the town meeting where we vote on the budget on Monday, the 4th.
And then we have voting on March 5th.
And then on Tuesday, we vote on the officers who are running. Town meeting that will be not a meeting so much as just gathering here to vote. So we hope you all turn out at the various meetings, and importantly, we thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. And thanks to all of our participants.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.